You're so much closer. There's so much work involved. It's much more of a sport. Bow hunting is the fly fishing of fishing, so to speak.
If you're already interested in elk hunting with a rifle, bow hunting elk is a completely different game, and it's even more addicting.
We hiked for like 2 hours in the dark, hunted all day hard, got an elk on the ground at like 5 or 6 p.m., got done processing or quartering it at like 10 p.m., and we didn't get back to the house until 2 a.m. Like it's just nonstop. And I mean, you're hoofing it up there. I mean, you can't do that if you're not in pretty good physical shape.
It is very difficult. I mean, you got weight on your back. You're going uphill, you're going downhill, side hill. You kind of got to be ready for the whole slew of scenarios you can have, whether it just be endurance. I mean, everybody needs a hobby in the end, so you might as well do one that puts some food in the freezer in the meantime.
And we are live. Ryan, how are you, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Just to give the listeners some context, it's the first time you and I have actually ever spoken, apart from Instagram DMs, I'm pretty sure, right?
I believe it is.
Yeah, you were, I think we got connected. I put something in my newsletter talking about rifles for distance hunting, and then you chimed in, messaged me on Instagram, and were giving me some recommendations on different brands of rifles and ballistics for various different reloading options, if I remember correctly.
That does ring a bell, and I'm curious to know what you think about your Seekins that you got.
I like it. I like my Seekins a lot. I mean, I'm in Arkansas, so I'm not typically shooting crazy long distances, but I went out to Colorado and was hunting elk out there with it. I took it to the range, and I was hitting what I was looking at 750 yards with that rifle, which is farther than I've ever shot before. So I was pretty pleased with it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And what caliber did you get?
I got a 300 Win Mag.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's weird though, man, because I bought the first time I went elk hunting, I had a 300 Win Mag in the Winchester, and man, I was shooting it at my farm at 500 yards, but then every single season I wouldn't bump it or anything like that, and it seemed to walk considerably every time I shoot it. So like I'd have it dialed in, put it in the gun case, take it out, and then it would literally be shooting 6 to 8 inches one way or the other off zero. So I kind of lost confidence in the gun. I don't know if it was the gun. I don't know if it was the scope. I don't know what it was, but I had a really $high scope on that mount too. So I just said, okay, we're wiping the slate clean so I can have confidence in my rig. And I got that Seekins, and I think I put what was the scope I put on that thing? I don't even remember what the scope was. But it's been a rock star, so I can't complain with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have 2 Christiansens.
Mm-hmm.
I really like those. I have a 6.5 Creedmoor that I use for deer and smaller game, and then a 300 Win Mag that I use for elk.
Nice. What scope do you have on that? 300?
I have on both of those, actually. I have the Leupold VX6s.
That's what I had on my Winchester. It was the Leupold VX6, and that's like I said. I don't know if it was the right first scope, but you're obviously having good luck with the Leupold.
I've had good luck so far. I mean, I've bought another one after the first one, so I like them.
Nice. Is yours the illuminated reticle with the what is their CDS, like custom dial system or whatever they call it?
Yeah, both of them have the CDS and then kind of that blinking auto level inside the reticle. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice, man. I mean, Leopold's a great scope. My 243 uses a Leopold, and I can drive tacks with that thing, man, but it's 243, so I don't want to go elk hunting with it. It's good for deer.
Yeah, yeah.
But I love it, man. I love hunting. I love talking to people about hunting, so I just wanted to get you on the show and dive into that. So you've been hunting your whole life? Was this something you were raised doing, or is this something you kind of got into later?
Nope. Since I walked this earth, hunting's been a part of my life. Back further than I can probably even track. My whole family's from Montana, so it's kind of just been part of the deal growing up here.
Part of the deal. Well, it's pretty awesome that you're in Montana, because like for me, trying to get out-of-state license tags from Montana is a pain in the butt. So being native Montanan there, you're able to take advantage of all the in-state tags and permits, not to do all that draw stuff, right? Like you're able to just get your tags, or do you have to draw for them still?
Yeah, you can just buy them over the counter. I feel like that availability is probably dwindling as we go on with the years. But as of right now, and the way it's been in the past, we can just go buy general elk, deer, bear licenses and go out and chase them.
Nice, man. So your dad raised you hunting, like he was the one that kind of took you under his wing and taught you the ropes with it?
Yep, my dad and my grandpa. It's just been kind of the traditional handed down generation after generation. My grandpa taught my dad taught me. And then here come in August, I'll have to start teaching my own.
Nice. How old your son?
He's due in August.
He's due in August.
Yeah.
So you got a little while to go before you start teaching him. A little while.
Well, you can never start too soon.
That's true. That's true. How old were you when you went out in the woods?
Oh boy, I went with a little kid. When I was a little kid, rather, before I could hunt. Probably, I would say around 8 years old is probably when I remember going out. Mm-hmm. Just tagging along, probably just weighing the party down, but I was out there.
Yeah, man. I think I was probably about 8 too when I was able to go to squirrel camp, my family's squirrel camp. And then I think I was probably a little bit older when we started going to deer camp. But yeah, man, like, those are some of my best memories. Dad picking me up early from school so we could get a head start on the drive and just go down there, spend the weekend at the cabin, shooting guns, listen to, big lies and just getting out, man, getting removed from everything and just living where there's good stars, good memories, and no distractions.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. That's some of my best childhood memories were out hunting, whether I was carrying a gun or a bow or just there for the ride.
Mm-hmm. You do a lot more bow hunting than with a rifle, or about the same?
I tend to favor bow hunting. That's kind of where most of my focus is. This year actually ended up killing a bull with a rifle, and it's been, I think, 4 years since I've had to pull the rifle out.
Yeah.
So bow season's kind of my jam, but again, the benefit of being a resident in Montana, you can do either one.
And the bow season here is significantly longer. I'm assuming it's probably the same in Montana, right? Like your bow season spans several more months than modern gun.
I think it's bow season is 6 weeks, if I remember correctly, versus rifle, I think, is 5. And
So
now I'm embarrassed that I don't know that for sure, but
yeah, like for deer here in Arkansas, I think bow season opens in September and it goes until the end of February. Whereas modern gun, you've got like the second week in November until the last week in November, I think. And then you get one, or maybe it's until the second week in December. So you got a month basically. Whereas with bow season, you've got multiple months. And I've bow hunted a little bit, but I haven't done it enough to make it like my go-to norm. But that's where I want to take things, man, because you're so much closer. There's so much work involved. It's much more of a sport with bow hunting. Like bow hunting is the fly fishing of fishing, so to speak.
it really is a kind of, if you're already interested in elk hunting with a rifle, bow hunting elk is a completely different game, and it's even more addicting, and oftentimes can be even more expensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody needs a hobby in the end, so you might as well do one that puts some food in the freezer in the meantime.
100%, man. What kind of bow do you shoot?
I've shot a Matthews the past few years. Actually just picked up their new one that they came out with this year, and I've been really happy with it so far.
So a lot of people that are in the bow hunting space, like when that is their hobby, when that is their jam, like they're getting the new bow each year. Is there much improvements technologically speaking in bows year to year? Because I mean, I've got an RX3, Hoyt RX3 when that model came out, but they're up to like the RX12 or something crazy right now, I think.
So I was given, whether it be an industry secret or just common knowledge, I don't know. But I was given a little tip that I think the average bow hunter upgrades like every 4 years, and the bow manufacturers know that. So they tend to kind of go in a similar cycle of when they release really big upgrades, because they know the guy that bought the bow last year isn't going to upgrade necessarily this year. So it's better off to kind of stage those upgrades when kind of in a pattern that people are going to buy more bows.
So what you tell me is I need to probably get a new RX12 or whatever it is.
I don't know. I mean, if you bought a bow after the year 2010, it's going to perform. They're so nice now, and they do so much more than they did in the past. I mean, I didn't need a new bow this year. I wanted one, so I bought one.
Yeah.
But if you have a modern compound bow, it's going to do what you need it to do for a long time.
I feel like with the bows, I don't know. I just need to get in the habit of shooting more. Like I bought a new target the other day. I shot out my old target. So I'm going to start, now that the weather's getting nice, I'm going to start making a habit of every day just shooting minimum of, I don't know, 10 arrows or so, but make that a daily habit and just kind of weave it into everything that I'm doing throughout every single day of my existence. Because I feel like if I don't do that, I'm not going to be putting in enough reps with the arrows shooting until hunting season gets here. Because I mean, you're shooting primarily with a bow. So like, how frequently do you practice?
You know, not enough. That's for sure. And I don't know if you can ever practice enough. Right now, I'm trying to shoot once a week in the winter. And then as the summer comes, usually I'm able to shoot every day. Mm-hmm. And by that, it could be 3 arrows. It could be a dozen. I truly think the best way to practice is to shoot one cold arrow and just be done. Because in a hunting scenario, you don't get to take a few warm-up shots. It's one shot.
So one arrow a day, and then just see what you're doing with that one arrow, basically?
I think that's the best way to go, personally. After you dial in all your form and everything with reps.
It's a big caveat there. After you get dialed in, move to once a day, as opposed to having never shot before, wanting to take up bow hunting, and then only shooting once a day.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of guys, what I equate it to is a lot of guys say, if you want to get good at pull-ups, every time you walk by a pull-up bar, do a pull-up. So if you have a setup and the ability to have your bow sitting there, and every time you walk by it, just shoot one arrow, I think that's the best way to replicate practice for hunting. Because when you get in the repetitive nature of shooting, you know, you're making tweaks as you go naturally, and that you're just not going to get that opportunity in a hunting situation. You need to be perfect on the first shot and the only shot.
Because I've got, here at my studio, I've got my gym, and my gym's about, I don't know, I want to say it's probably 30 feet by 90 feet or 70 feet, somewhere in there. So I ought to just set up a target on the opposite end, and every time I walk down the hall, shoot once. I feel like I can work that into my day, and I'd be better off for it for sure.
Yeah, you have the perfect setup. If you're able to do that and just have it there, I think that would lead to a lot better situational training versus just repetitive target shooting.
Yeah, I like that. I probably need to put like a metal backdrop or something on that back wall. So if I've got an employee walking on that back hall, I don't send an arrow into him. That might be a liability on my part. But no, that's a good idea, man. I'll start doing that for sure. What kind of broadheads are you using during hunting season?
So I shoot a fixed 2-blade head with bleeder blades. It's Day 6 Broadheads is the brand. I've shot a few bulls with those and shot a few whitetails, and they work really well. I will never shoot a mechanical broadhead. I've had bad experience with them in the past, and for elk especially, I tend to favor a fixed blade broadhead. They don't necessarily fly as well, but these ones tend to fly pretty well, and they've been devastating for what I've seen.
I feel like that is one of the most controversial topics in the bow hunting realm, is like, do you shoot a mechanical or a fixed blade? I feel like I heard both ends of the spectrum, and I don't know enough. Like, I haven't bow hunted enough to know where I stand personally on the matter. I think I've got Grim Reapers in my case right now, which is an expandable, but I've also got some fixed blade that I've shot around with, and they both fly relatively similar in my target practice. So I don't know. I've not, I shot a mule deer once with the mechanical, and I wasn't super impressed with how it functioned there. So maybe I need to just switch over to the fixed, I guess.
It's a debate that will never go away. That's for sure.
Yeah.
To me, it adds a risk of failure. It's just a point of potential failure relying on something to open upon impact.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just that. I guess if I if I hit something, I want to know that everything that's going to cause trauma is already in place. So we don't have to rely on something moving to get there.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me, man. What weight are the broadheads that you're shooting?
So I shoot 100 grain broadheads, and then I kind of counter that with some heavier weight on the insert on the front.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes out to probably, I think I'm at about 150 grains total on the front, but only 100 grain broadhead.
Are you shooting those? I know the see, I don't even know my terminology here, but like those ultra thin shafted arrows. What's the nomenclature for those?
So to be honest, I just call them micro diameters.
Yeah.
They are a smaller diameter shaft.
And they're typically carbon, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you do shoot those or you don't shoot those?
I do now. Yeah. I didn't in the past. But with this setup now, I am shooting the micros.
And you're just front loading weight onto them. So you're adding weight to that carbon shaft. It's just significantly thinner in diameter. So it's probably getting better airflow, less resistance overall, right?
Yeah. And it does fly better. But it's kind of a balance between how much weight you have on the front and the back. The more weight up front tends to lead towards better penetration, kinetic energy, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Makes sense. What's the longest shot you've made with a bow?
Ooh. In my younger years, my range has tended to shrink as I've gotten older. But I think the first antelope I shot with a bow was at 74.
That's
and that was, yeah, it was a poke. I try to keep it, absent a follow-up shot if it's needed. Try to keep it in that 40 range.
Yeah.
It's getting that close with antelope in particular is pretty hard out on the wide open. But 40 and in is kind of the sweet spot for me.
Yeah. Yeah. 40, I feel relatively confident with, but man, like listening to Rogan talk about shooting 80 yards or something crazy, like that's a whole nother ball game, man. Cause so many variables. I mean, people that have never bow hunted, they're familiar with shooting a rifle. Like when you're shooting, 500 plus yards of the rifle, there's a lot of variables too. But when you're shooting, 80 yards with a bow, it's like every little thing's got to be perfectly dialed in.
It is. And it's great practice when you're shooting a bag or something to be able to shoot out that far. It really is good to practice that far. Cause it will tell you immediately if you're doing anything wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if I go much, time between shooting, I'll set it up at 20 yards and I'll be zinging them in there. And I'm like, man, I've got this dialed in. I didn't get rusty at all. And then I'll step back another 10 yards and I'm at 30. And I'm like, oh man, I'm all over the board.
Distance can be your friend or the enemy when it comes to shooting a bow.
100%, man. So let's just talk about everything gear related, man. We'll just knock out the gear stuff because I feel like a lot of people have a lot of questions on that. And in reality, like the gear is the less significant of all the variables. Like I've killed more deer wearing a pair of blue jeans than I've ever killed wearing anything else. But now there's all these systems. They call them systems for hunting apparel. Like you got your, spring season system. But in Montana, people that are there hunting, living a lifestyle, like they've got a good feel for what is and is not necessary. Like when I went hunting in Colorado, all the locals there, they were all wearing, the Kuiu brand stuff, like the guides out there, the people that live there that just do it every single day. Like they're all wearing pretty much the same stuff because it's been tried, tested, and true. So when it comes to like gear, and you're wearing a Sitka shirt right now, is that kind of your go-to brand?
It has been. And by it has been, I have a lot of it, probably more than I care to admit. I like the way it fits me better than anything else. And it also it lasts a long time compared to the other gear I've seen.
They got like a lifetime warranty on all their stuff, right?
I'm honestly not sure on their warranty. I've never had to exercise the warranty.
Yeah.
And I've had my stuff for a long time and it's held the test of time.
Well, you can't beat that, man. What kind of boots you wear?
I have been wearing Crispies lately. I have a few pairs of those, kind of heavier, and then some uninsulated ones, and I'm really happy with those.
I bought a pair of Schnees, I think, for my first elk hunt, And those are pretty solid. But then once I swapped out all my footwear to zero drop wide toe box shoes, they don't really make, like, there's not really a brand out there that's a hunting brand that's kind of trying to cater to the zero drop wide toe box crowd. So I've been using like the boots from Vivo Barefoot, which is not a hunting boot per se at all. They're kind of like thinly built. They're good, but they're not really, warm and supportive like most out western hunting boots are. So I'm probably gonna get another pair of those, and then run the risk of blowing my ankle again. But I can't do the elevated heel, man, with that steel shank and arch support like that. Just totally jacks my feet up.
So I'm similar to you. I wear the minimalist shoes when I lift and everything. And I used to have a pair of Schnees, and at the time they were the most comfortable boot I had ever worn. So if you're not a guy that likes a wide toe box, I recommend those boots just based on comfort. But I will say that the Crispies I have a much wider toe box. They're a lot more comfortable. You're probably not going to get away much from the elevated heel in some of those boots, but I find the Crispies to be less aggressive in the terms of the heel. And they're a lot more flexible in the sole, which I tend to like.
Yeah. My buddy that I hunt with has Crispies, and he swears by them. And I like the Vivos because they're totally minimalist, but they just don't have near the protection that legitimate hunting boots have. But once I swapped over, man, I looked at my Schnees, or however you pronounce it, and those things are like super tight, man. Like you got to be like, I just couldn't breathe in them anymore.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I keep mine now for work boots, and slipped them on the other day, and I couldn't do it. It was just it was suffocating on my feet.
It's rough. So when it comes to like hunting out west in Montana, like what kind of terrain are you in? Because Montana's got open plains, it's got mountainous, wooded areas. Like where you're hunting, what's the topography and what's the overall environment looking like?
So I guess it depends on what I'm hunting. Like antelope, for instance, you're on flat ground, just completely flat, wide open, sagebrush, rolling hills, stuff like that. Mule deer can be a lot of stuff like that, and up into kind of the rolling foothills. And then the elk is typically up at higher elevations, around 9,000 feet, and up getting close to some of that alpine stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you got to be in shape to do that kind of hunting.
You do. I've seen, you see it both ways. You see a lot of guys that kill elk that look like they've never jogged a mile in their life, and more power to them. I tend to favor the side of trying to be in shape for it. I feel like it leads to a better outcome. But I've also screwed up on elk and watched them go over to a guy that wasn't in shape, and he shot him. So
yeah,
I tend to favor being in shape. If there is competition out there, it lets you beat them to where you're going anyway.
Because you're typically hunting public land.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. Like in Arkansas, I didn't grow up hunting out west at all. I mean, I've killed a lot of deer, smaller game animals, lots of wild hogs and whatnot. But in Arkansas, at least, there's no spotting and stalking. Like you have a deer stand. Some people use corn. A lot of people use corn, and you just sit out there, and it's hard in its own way. Like, we'll go out there, 30, 40 minutes before daybreak, and we'll be out there all day until you can't see the crosshairs anymore. So I might be out there 12 hours just sitting in a stand, which is hard from like a patience standpoint, but not so much from a physical standpoint. And then when I started hunting out west for, mule deer and elk and whatnot, I mean, none of the guys that I hunt with would be able to do it because like when I went elk hunting this past year, it took us 45 minutes to drive to the trailhead, and then we hiked for like 2 hours in the dark to get to where we wanted to go by the time daybreak was there, and then hunted all day hard. Got an elk on the ground at like 5 or 6 p.m. Got done processing or quartering it at like 10 p.m. and we didn't get back to the house until 2 a.m. Like it's just nonstop. I mean, we were, I think, 10,000, 11,000 feet elevation when we shot that one. And I mean, you're hoofing it up there. It's like you can't do that if you're not in pretty good physical shape.
Yeah, I don't even know how to say it much better than that, but it is like some days can just be kind of the mental grind more so, where it's just putting one foot in front of the other and just covering ground, not seeing anything, not hearing anything. And then other days, like you said, when you knock something down, it is it is very difficult. I mean, you got weight on your back, you're going uphill, you're going downhill, side hill. So you kind of got to be ready for the whole slew of scenarios you can have, whether it just be endurance, just the monotony of hiking, or strength, agility, and endurance. You kind of get the whole slew of everything.
I mean, I've done like marathons, I've done 50-mile marches, and there was an instance on this last one where we were packing that elk out in the middle of the night, and I can't see anything. I'm stepping over like a bunch of deadfall. I've got probably 50 pounds of all the organ meat in my back, and I'm just like, I'm going to fall off this cliff. This is way harder than that 50-mile march. Like, this is insane. Who's doing this on a regular basis? Nobody. But when you get back to the cabin, you actually like lay down and get horizontal. It's like, man, that was freaking awesome. Worth every step.
There's a lot of tricks you have to play with yourself to get yourself through that. And I've been there too many times to count. And every time you just got to let your mind escape to somewhere and tell yourself, whatever it be, how many miles or how many hours are going to go by. And you're going to look back on it and be like, okay, it's over. I don't have to do that again. And now look at what I have here.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, you got to go back the next day or back in for a second trip. And that's kind of part of the game. But there's a lot of mental games you got to play with yourself just to get yourself through that.
Yeah. I think I read it in like a Stoic book or something. But basically, like when you're going through a hard time, just keep telling yourself, tonight I will be in my bed. Tonight I will be in my bed. And as simple as that sounds, like knowing that, it's like, okay, there's I just got to get through this. I get this next step knocked out. And once you lay down, it's like that pain's over. You just got to get to that point to begin with. And so many people, they don't put them in a situation where they have to think like that, but there's so much reward and value in having to go through that turmoil to get to that stance and then be able to appreciate that relaxation so much more.
I agree. And if it wasn't for putting more hunters out in the field for competition, I would want everybody in America to pack an elk out just so they can go through what you just said. I think it'd make the world a little bit better place.
100%, man. So what do you do with your training? Like, how do you structure your training with hunting? Because you're not competing in like bodybuilding or anything like that. Like hunting is your physical sport, right?
Yeah. And to be honest, it's pretty simple. It's just foundational strength training is pretty much the basis of it. And then, as you get closer leading up to hunting season, you kind of change exercises, rep ranges, and then add in a little bit of cardio just to build that endurance. I tend to kind of in those phases leading up to hunting season tend to favor kind of the muscular endurance training. Just kind of, higher rep, monotonous, under load, that type of stuff.
Do you ever do any like rucking, like with a weighted pack?
I don't. I probably should do it more. But no, I don't. The only times I really have weight on my back that I'm hiking with is when I'm hunting.
Yeah. I like the whole rucking scene's gotten really popular lately. Everybody they get those Go Ruck packs and they put like a plate in there, 25-pound plate or 35-pound plate. And I've got so many hiking trails in my neck of the woods. I'm like, man, I just need to start doing that, once a week leading up to hunting season. I feel like if I do that, then having, 50 pounds of back straps in my pack won't be nearly as daunting.
It's like and I'm probably the worst person to be saying this because I got trails that go straight up mountains 2 minutes from my house. And I don't utilize them like I should for training. But yeah, if you're out there rucking, it's probably gonna help you a lot in the mountains.
It's so much harder when you're actually hunting though, because like when you're out there rucking and exercising for hunting, like you're not going to go to the extent of putting all of your hunting gear on, putting your rifle sling over your shoulder, carrying your binos, like all that other stuff that you're heaving around, huffing around. Like that's what makes it hard, man. Like you don't have the exercise athletic clothing that's breathable. You're sweating. Like it's not optimal from an exercise standpoint at all. But it definitely burns calories.
It does. And one thing I found too, there's a very different training for hunting, and hunting are completely different in the fact that when you're training, most people's tendency is to improve, whether it be on time, weight, efficiency, to get, be it, for example, get that rucksack up the mountain. You want to improve on time every time, right? When you're hunting, for me anyway, there's a little bit of conservation mindedness where you don't want to blow out all your energy if you don't have a target in front of you. So if you're just trying to get from point A to point B, you're being a little more conservative unless you're in a foot race with somebody else or in a foot race to get where you see elk.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a different mindset when you're actually hunting versus just rucking up a mountain. That's just my perspective, but
no, for sure, man. Like when I'm hunting, like I like to walk 100 yards or so and then stop and just listen and observe and like try and keep my heart rate down. Like I kind of do it based off of what my heart rate and breathing is like. Like if I'm starting to increase my heart rate and I'd be more shaky if I was to see something, like I try to minimize that. So I'll only do like 100-yard stints or something so I can, listen and then make sure that if I was to see something, I could put a well-placed shot on them and not be like breathing heavily. And that's totally counter to trying to improve time and efficiency from a training standpoint as well.
Yeah, I agree. And, especially out west, the name of the game is glassing. So if you're stopping every few, be it a few 100 yards or what have you, to glass around, you're going to see more as opposed to just blazing up the hill, and you might be spooking stuff that you're never seeing.
Mm-hmm. What are your binos? Going back to gear for a second here.
So I use Vortex binos right now. Been looking into getting some of those range finding binos. Those are pretty sweet, but I haven't pulled the trigger on them yet.
That's what my buddy's got, man. He's got those Vortex that have the rangefinders, and he's got it synced with the scope on his rifle and the app on his phone and the rounds that he's reloading. So like he can range animal with his binos, look at his app, and then it like syncs with his gun so that he knows exactly what his adjustment should be, which is like taking things to a whole nother level, man. Like makes you wonder what they were doing 100 years ago, because they weren't doing that.
Yeah, my brother has a very similar setup. I think he has the SIG binos, and it'll hook up to his weather meter too. So it'll read the weather meter will read the atmospheric pressure in the wind, send it to your binos, give you a reading, and then you adjust your scope and shoot.
Yeah.
So there can be as little or as much technology involved as you want now.
It's kind of crazy because like for me, hunting is not like, I love hunting. I love eating everything that I've harvested, but I hunt to relax. Like I'm killing myself physically with the bodybuilding. I've got the business that's just constantly stressing me out. So I go into the woods to escape from all of that and relax and be like, at peace with nature. And I feel like if I'm very analytical and technical, and I go deep into the weeds with all the technologies of, nutrition and training programming. But I feel like if I wanted to adopt that same philosophy towards hunting, I'd almost take some of the fun out of it, which I don't know if that probably would not be a good thing for me psychologically. So it's almost like I want to keep things relatively simple, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. And much like you, hunting is my escape. It also formulates about 90% of what I think about throughout the year. Mm-hmm. So it is definitely my escape, but I've been accused of taking it far too seriously, and I can see why. But no, I see what you're saying about keeping it as simple as you can. But some of those bells and whistles are really nice when they help you out.
They're pretty handy. Like when I go out hunting, I'm guilty of just like getting out there in the sunshine, taking a nap, man. Like I can't take a nap when I'm in the gym. I can't take a nap when I'm working at the computer. But if I get out hunting, my like cortisol drops. I get into that parasympathetic state and I actually feel at peace in life, and I'm able to take a nap. So like I'm a hard hunter, but like I also like to be a very relaxed, lazy hunter at times. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy.
No, there's a lot of value to what you just said, and nobody that's been hunting for any amount of time won't tell you the best nap they've ever had is in the sun on the side of a mountain or something to that effect. Because there's a lot of truth to what you just said, and the kind of that zen feeling you get being out there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
What is your profession? What do you do for a living?
I'm a civil engineer.
Civil engineer. What all does that entail?
A lot of kind of your basic roadway, water, sewer infrastructure type design, permitting stuff. I'm actually at a pretty cool place where we get to do a lot of stream restoration stuff too. So that's kind of the fun part of it. But yeah, just a lot of, I guess, infrastructure for development is kind of the boring way to put it.
Well, with you being an avid outdoorsman and also a civil engineer by trade, how do you view like wildlife conservation, maintaining habitat? Because like you're out there in the woods and you're seeing all that, but then you're also working on everything human beings are doing from a developmental standpoint and what impact it's having on the environment. Like how do you view all of that? Like what are your thoughts towards it all as you go through the day to day?
So this is a thought that I toy with a lot. Because to put it quite simply, I would happily go out and defend a piece of national forest land or BLM because that's public land. Do not develop it. I would defend that. On the flip side, I am also doing public and private developments for a living. The way that I kind of justify that in my head is our role is to make sure that it's done in accordance with all the regulations that keep it as minimal as possible in terms of outreaching impacts.
Yeah.
So if you can be the guy that is taking the steps to make sure that it's done correctly versus incorrectly, to summarize it in short, and causing downstream impacts. But it is still kind of a thought experiment I wrestle with quite a bit. And kind of the only other way I can justify it is that if I don't do it, someone else is going to make money on it. So I might as well do it.
Now that makes sense. When you listen to your grandfather telling you hunting stories from when he was young, does he say things along the lines of there's significantly less wildlife population than when he was a youngster out there in the woods?
So my grandfather has since passed, but I do, some stories that stick in my head are about, when, for example, the place that my family and I elk hunt, they've hunted for years and years and years. I think over 40 years now that they've hunted there. And hearing the stories about, what it was like when they first found the place, just this magical, just eruption of elk, and stories about, even stories that predated that. He actually my grandfather shot a record book bull just outside of his home at the time. And it was like on a piece of public land that right now, if you went out there in any day in hunting season, you'd probably see 30 people per square mile. It's just that overpopulated with hunters. Mm-hmm. And he shot almost a 400-inch bull on that mountain. So it's kind of stories like that resonate with me about kind of the old times and how all this, maybe not the amount of animals that were around, but the quality of animals. I think that's something that kind of really resonates with me about kind of the old time stories.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I mean, my dad's a wildlife biologist, so he's, very much so a naturalist and trying to do right by wildlife conservation. So I was just kind of raised with that, always, being the discussion at my dinner table. And, he's of the opinion that we're just far too overpopulated as a planet. Human beings are far too overpopulated. And it's interesting because, like, I've got so many people come on the podcast talking about longevity. And, I've had recent podcasts about us actually being in a population decline right now. And that would be, catastrophic from a developmental standpoint. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I see like waterfowl populations in Arkansas, and waterfowl populations seem to be significantly lower now than they were when my dad was hunting, in wetlands out here. So like, I don't want humans to be the reason we're seeing this massive decline in biodiversity. But I don't know what the answer is. Like, I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the underlying problem is. I don't know if it's as simple as saying, hey, we're just overpopulated as a species and we're hindering wildlife population. I don't know. But I feel like a lot of people just simply don't even think or talk about this. And I think that's probably the biggest problem, because there's just a complete lack of awareness.
No, I agree with everything you just said. It's interesting to think of what it will be like when, essentially we pass the torch on to our kids or our grandkids, what wildlife and public lands will look like. Unfortunately, I think the biggest factor at play is us as humans. I've heard the same kind of the birth rate stall that we're seeing and how that's going to impact the population long term. And so I'm familiar with all that stuff, but I can't help but see how fast everything's growing and not be concerned about how far it spreads as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just look in my own familiar territory here, and I see housing developments popping up all over the place. I see fast food chains, jumping up. I see all this deforestation, and it's like, I don't know, man. I mean, I guess the national parks have their protection, so they're not going to be developing there. But it just seems as though wildlife habitat in general has been significantly put on the back burner and declining as a result of human development. And it is sad to see, because like I would like to be able to just make it convenient for me to take my son right down the road and be able to expose him to all kinds of hunting opportunities, fishing opportunities, as opposed to having to drive hours and hours to get to some place that's far removed from human interaction and touch points. I mean, like, it's crazy, man. Like, my farm is 4 hours from here, and I drive down there, and the stars down there are like a totally different category than what I see at my own house. And I live out in the country here, and it's just like, it's unfortunate that most people will never even experience what a night sky without light pollution even looks like.
Yeah, to that point alone, like, most people will never know what it's like to have a shadow on the ground when there's no moon out, because the stars are so bright. And that's something that I agree with you too. Like, you're walking in at 3, 4 in the morning, elk hunting, you're walking up into these mountains, and you can look out in some directions and not see anything but stars, no light pollution of any kind. And it's even noticeable. I live in Bozeman, Montana now, which is one of the fastest growing cities in America, which is a conversation in itself. But you go from Bozeman, where I'm at, to even 10, 15 miles down the road, and the night skies are two completely different things.
Yeah.
And it is really concerning to see kind of the sprawl, and it's amplified even more being in Montana with the population growth that we're seeing. There was so much distance of undeveloped lands between cities that now, as you see that shrink more and more and more, it does grow a bit more concern. And I really wish there was, but I just don't see an end in sight.
Yeah. Do you live in town in Bozeman?
I do, yeah.
What do you think? Because I feel like Montana, I've been hearing a lot more about Montana. Like, I've always loved Montana. I've driven through it several times. I don't have any family there, so I've not spent, significant periods of time there. But every time I've gone through it, it's been like, man, I could live in a place like this. It's just beautiful. But it seems as though Montana has become more or less a destination location. A lot of people are going there. The people that are local to Montana, native to Montana, I guess, like, does that just totally piss y'all off?
I'll try to be as kind-hearted with this response as I can be. It's shocking now how rare it is to meet someone that was born and raised in Montana, where that, even when I was a kid, it was more rare to meet someone that wasn't from here.
Yeah.
So that it is completely flopped from what it used to be. And, a lot of people will point fingers at like Yellowstone, especially the show Yellowstone. That actually did make an impact on where I'm at. That brought a lot of people here because they want to come see it once. They buy a place here. They summer here. Now they live here. There's benefits to it having that. For instance, the tax revenue here, Montana's income essentially increases with more residents here, more people here. However, it is turning Montana into something that isn't Montana anymore. So it is, I would say it's frustrating to watch. But it's really hard to navigate on how you talk about this. And the best thing I can ever say or tell people is that if you really like Montana, shut up about it. Yeah. That's kind of the best way that I've come to reason with it. But, the hunting industry in particular has not helped. It has not helped with the draw to Montana. And I'm probably the exception because I'm in the epicenter of all the people flooding to Montana. Everybody comes to Bozeman. That's just kind of where they end up landing, and rightfully so. It's gorgeous here. You have access to everything you need, ski hills and all that stuff. So it's the longer I talk, the more I realize I'm just venting. But no, it is. I guess to answer your original question, people from Montana do get a little frustrated, especially with the increase of people that come here and stay here and then kind of try to work their way into local politics and try to make changes to things that have been set in place for so long. I think that's kind of what miffs the native Montanans more than anything.
What is the biggest telltale sign that someone's not from Montana?
Ooh. That could boil down to a lot of different things. Clothing, actually, believe it or not, clothing is probably a pretty big indicator. Just you can tell a lot just based on interactions with people. When I was growing up, if you pass someone on a dirt road, you wave.
Yeah.
And even driving through a neighborhood, you see someone, you just wave. That's just kind of the name of the game. That's how it was. You don't get that anymore, like at all. And it's deviating a little bit from the Montana I grew up in. But yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. I think it's case dependent on how to pick out someone that's not from Montana.
Yeah. A lot more people littering probably gets under your skin.
Yeah. Yeah. You do see some extra trash along the highways. But I'm not going to say all Montanans are perfect either. There's some idiots running around here too. So
yeah, it's weird, man. There's been this massive boom where I'm at too, like Northwest Arkansas. I mean, Arkansas, like what is your opinion of Arkansas? Do you have an opinion of Arkansas?
I've never been to Arkansas. I have no opinion of Arkansas.
Yeah, see, that's normally the case. Like normally because I do a lot of traveling, I tell people I'm from Arkansas and their first response is Bill Clinton because he's from Arkansas. And I'm like, yeah, but then I don't know what to respond because they either like Bill Clinton or they hate Bill Clinton. So it's put me in a tricky position. But then, Walmart is headquartered here. J.B. Hunt, Tyson, there's all these massive corporations that are headquartered in Northwest Arkansas specifically. So there's just a ton of money in this corner of the state. And Walmart recently mandated that everybody that's got product in Walmart stores have a home office location within 20 miles or something like that of Walmart's headquarters. So there's been this massive influx of people and population here in my neck of the woods. Like they're just building development like crazy, man. And I don't think that I like it. Like I don't like that there's all these people coming in because I've always appreciated the fact that nobody knew what they thought of Arkansas because it was so foreign to them. Because I've always thought that I've got this little, oasis that nobody knew about. And I feel like it's probably going to be experiencing a similar similar trajectory as Montana in that regard. Like, you start bringing all these people in that don't appreciate it, don't respect it, take it for granted, and that just never bodes well. You know, there's going to be more money coming in for sure, but more money isn't necessarily more better.
No, I agree. And I think it's perfectly normal to be defensive of your home turf. I just think that's perfectly normal. There's different ways to go about it, of course. But no, I didn't know that about Arkansas, that it was Walmart's headquarters. But no, I completely see where you're coming from. And I'm seeing very similar things here.
Yeah, I feel like people in general just need to appreciate, you know, pristine things more than they do. And that's another tricky topic with the hunting community, man, because you've got people that have grown up hunting, especially if they're hunting public land. They've got their spots. They know where they like to go, and they're typically very protective of those spots. They don't want to bring people out there. They don't want to highlight it. They don't want anybody else to know about it, which I totally get. But I feel like it's a double-edged sword, because if you're so protective of hunting in general, the barrier to entry for other people to get into the lifestyle of hunting is exponentially harder. And if fewer people hunt, which hunting as a, you know, pastime has, I think, dropped significantly over the last, 100 years for sure, then there's going to be less people overall that value nature in general. And that's obviously going to have negative repercussions too.
Oh, absolutely. Before I respond to this, I better plug my computer in so we don't die.
Yeah, for sure. Big old fish on your back wall there too, man.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a muley on the other side? I can't tell.
That is. I'll turn it for you. See, that's a big one my grandpa killed way back when.
Nice.
I can't take credit for that one.
You catch the fish?
I did. I did catch that one.
There you go.
So, remind me again what we were talking about. Oh, essentially introducing hunters and preserving hunting.
Yeah.
So that's a hard one to navigate for me, because I will readily admit to being very probably selfish with the opportunities I have. I get that, and I admit to being that way. I'm defensive of my hunting spots, and probably to a fault. I'll admit that, and I'll take that. I do see the argument for, the more hunters we lose, the harder it is to advocate for it, the harder it is to secure it in the future. My problem is with the amount of how much it's exploded, and it's almost getting loved to death, where too much of anything is never a good thing.
What's too much interest in hunting?
Sorry, say that again.
The explosion that you're referencing is the explosion of the interest in hunting, or what?
Yeah, both the interest in and the amount of hunters in the field right now. Granted, again, I have a very small snapshot. Nationwide, I'm in a very isolated corner of what I see. But I see, so many more people out there now that leads to, more pressure on the animals. Animals are more prone to go to private land and not be accessible. It leads to more conflicts in the field. The more people you have out there with anything, more conflicts are going to happen. That's just a given. So it's hard to really advocate for recruiting more hunters when it is essentially degrading your own opportunities. If you can kind of see what I mean there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky, man. I don't know the answer to this one either. I mean, I think it's advantageous for there to be a growing interest in wildlife preservation, conservation, biodiversity, hunting, but not at the exclusion of continuing on the moral code of ethics that hunting has been built upon. And I feel like when you have more people coming in, you run the risk of more people devaluing those principles and not abiding by that moral code of ethics, which is obviously a negative. But at the same time, if nobody's hunting. Like if you fast forward and look into the future with a crystal ball, if nobody has an interest in hunting, then the likelihood that we'll have national parks that are protected and a care towards managing wildlife populations of various species, like that all goes on the wayside. So then we lose all of that, which is obviously not good. And if you get a lot more people hunting, I would assume, basic economics, there would want to be a need or desire to create opportunity for that need to be met, and money and resources would be allocated to provide for it. But yeah, I don't know the answer either, man. I look at my son and I just hope that he's got opportunities to hunt. We got our farm that's been in our family for 5 generations, and your guess is as good as mine if it's going to be there by the time he is old enough to use it. I would hate to see that not be the case, but we're never promised tomorrow, so I don't know what the future's going to hold.
It's more than $1 million question at this point. But like you said, kind of the direction I see it going here locally is, money's the name of the game now. People are leasing land. Places that were typically open to the public are now being closed off and leased out. So the direction it's headed now is that if you want quality opportunities, you're going to have to pay more.
Yeah.
And that's very unfortunate, because all the kind of like the point I made earlier about the more pressure you have on public lands, the more prone those animals are to go onto private lands and not leave. I see that problem where I hunt on an annual basis. There's just more and more elk that will congregate on private land and never leave. And those people either don't let hunting or they lease it out to just a few people.
It's weird because I don't feel like just walking around here, I don't feel like I meet nearly as many people interested in hunting as I did 20 years ago. But I guess in your situation in Montana with the boom there and the draw of Montana being hunting to some extent, you're probably seeing a massive increase in people interested in hunting.
Yeah, it almost seems like a fad.
Yeah.
Like
Why do you think that is? Like what resulted in the catapult there? Like Rogan, Cam Hanes, things like that?
So I'll select the words I use wisely here, but I believe the coming generations, and I can't discredit them for this. They have an interest. They have more of an interest in, the natural world being overall healthier, pursuing their own food, that type of stuff. I believe that plays into it. And you can't discredit anyone for wanting to get into hunting for those reasons. I think that's the reason you should get into it. However, as you just mentioned, the social media pull from high profile influencers, be it, Rogan. I can't even call him out by name. I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. I think half the world does. But I think the attention he's thrown towards archery, elk hunting in general, and it's not just him, it's everybody else. I think it's things like that just pique more people's interest, and over time it just perpetuates, and then they come here and do it once, and then they come here and do it twice, and then they have a rental house here, and then they live here. And it has gotten to the point now where it's repeated itself so many times over that everybody and their cousin is an elk hunter here now. And it's even harder to get away from everybody.
Yeah. All the more reason to be in shape to get up to 10,000 plus feet elevation, huh?
Exactly.
I feel like you got to go up where no one else is willing to go, man. Like when you've got this massive increase in, supply of hunters, you got to be the one that is willing to do what the masses aren't, You
definitely got to plan on outworking your competition. That's for sure.
Yeah. When I hunted this past year, I don't know, man, like so many people are just rude. They don't have basic, friendly vibes. Like literally when I got that elk down, came back the next day to pack it out, there was somebody that was in that same field that I'd shot it in, And then as I was walking across the field to try and get to the elk with the route that I knew I could get to him safely and efficiently in, like they were literally pointing their guns at us, trying to scare us off. And like, that's just something that you wouldn't expect a friendly, neighborly person to do.
No, no. And I would like to assume most hunters wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's with anything, any part of life. If there's a group of humans that participate in something, there's going to be some idiots. There's going to be some problem causers. It's just kind of the nature of the game. And, you know, back to the point you made earlier, is that hunting is a very territorial endeavor for most people. Yeah. So the combination of those things probably leads to a lot of unpleasant encounters for a lot of people every year.
Yeah, 100%, man. When you go out there, do you hunt, are you setting up a camp, or are you coming back to your house after every night? Or like, I guess it just depends on where you're going in the state.
Yeah, for elk hunting, we typically camp, you know, and I'll take a block of time off every year. But for the most part, you know, my brother and I both work full-time jobs. My dad's retired now, so he's got it pretty good, but for the most part, we're weekend warriors. You know, leave Friday after work and get back Sunday afternoon. So it's kind of a run and gun affair, but we try to get all the time in that we can.
Yeah. When you say your son's due?
August.
This is your first one?
Yes.
You excited?
I'm very excited.
Scared?
I haven't gotten past the excitement to be scared yet.
No, that's awesome, man. August will be here before you know it, brother.
Yeah.
It's very cool, man. I'm Rigel, my son's 3 years, about to be 3 in May. Then we got another boy on the way due into June. And like he's too young to take out hunting yet, obviously, but I'm super, super stoked for that moment, man. Like being able to take him out there and just, you know, relive the moments when I was a kid for the first time going out there with my dad. Like my fondest memories with my father are out there in the woods. And I just want to do more of that with my son. I feel like there are very few vehicles in life as a parent that create more opportunity for growth in raising your child than I think hunting provides.
Oh, I could not agree more. I mean, you know, the two people I had bring me through it, my dad and my grandpa, there's not a shadow in my mind I'd probably be in a lot darker place if it wasn't for both of them. And, you know, all the good times and even the bad times, you know, there's been some times in the field where stuff went wrong or something, but now we look back at that and laugh about it.
Yeah. 100%, man. 100%. Well, we got to get together and go hunting sometime, man. I don't want to encroach on Montana territory. I'll be one of those guys, but you ought to come down to Arkansas, man. If you've never been down here, we got a crazy pig population. So like we need more pigs going down. So you got to come out here and slay some pigs.
I'd be in for that.
It'd be good, man. It'd be really good. You ever do any trapping?
So my brother used to trap quite a bit. I haven't myself. But I do, and I haven't done it for a few years, admittedly, but calling coyotes in the winter is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to trap when I was young, living with my folks, and then I met a guy like 3 weeks ago, and he told me, we were just in passing, he told me that he traps a lot. He invited me to come check his trap line. He caught like a coyote with me when I was out there with him, but he traps like bobcats and everything, and you don't see much of that anymore these days either. I mean, nobody, like I don't ever meet a trapper. So like when he told me he traps and invited me to come, I'm like 100%, man, I'd love to go check it out.
Yeah, the trapping game's pretty cool. But that one is a pretty hot ticket item even still. And I mean, there's billboards on the side of the road to stop trapping in Montana still.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it just is case dependent, you know, like I'm a big advocate for if I kill it, I eat it, I use it to the best of my ability. But I mean, you've also got to manage population. So like the hogs that we've got down at the farm, there are so many of them. They're an invasive species. They're totally destroying habitat and, you know, wreaking havoc on other species populations. So like if that isn't managed, it's a net negative. So I mean, like they've got disease now because there's so many of them. They're so overpopulated. So like in an instance like that, you have to take initiative because I mean humans have jacked up the whole system anyway. So like humans have to fix the problem. If they're overpopulated, that responsibility lies on humans because they don't have any natural predators, at least here in Arkansas.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think the majority of the people that are opposed to those management strategies are unfamiliar with how it actually works. To be honest, they're just not familiar with what proper management actually looks like.
Yeah.
But then again, I think a lot of people are sheltered from what it takes to manage animals, and that is death.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just refuse to accept that in today's world.
Yeah, there's definitely a circle of life, and death is the other end of that circle. And it just is reality. I mean, it's unfortunate because there's definitely some bad hunters out there, but most hunters that grew up hunting appreciate that circle of life all the more because they've been there to complete that circle and take a life. And I feel like that just creates another form of perspective that the lay person, the ignorant person, just is not aware of. And it's easier for them to be an armchair quarterback and point fingers and tell people that they're doing it all wrong.
Yeah, and I would like to believe I speak for the majority of hunters when I say this is I don't like to kill things. Like it's not that's I don't know how to say that, but I don't enjoy killing something. I enjoy putting a good shot on something and making a quick, clean kill. But nobody enjoys killing something. It's just taking a life isn't something that's just done willy-nilly and taken lightly.
Yeah.
It's I don't enjoy it. I guess I should say I enjoy doing it in a way that's as painless as possible for that animal. But it's not like I have this bloodlust to just go out and kill.
Yeah. You enjoy eating that premier nutrition that you can't get anywhere else, that you had to work hard for. And when you do that, when you hoof out a freaking elk that you packed out for however many miles, you don't throw any of that meat away. Like nothing gets wasted. I mean, you respect every single morsel on your plate. And like food waste is something that I'm super pissy about. Like I hate food waste. And when you hunt, you just don't waste food.
No, I'm 100% agree. There's a very strict rule in our house that is, if it had a pulse, it cannot go in the garbage.
Yeah.
There's just no way. And especially if I packed it off a mountain, it's just not even, I don't care if I'm stuffed to the brim, I'll eat it before you throw it away.
Yeah, 100%, man. And you're pretty much keto too, right?
Right now I am 100%. I kind of have fluctuated a little bit, but I did the full on carnivore, just red meat for 3 years. Didn't deviate at all, and have since kind of come out of that. And right now I've been eating probably more than I should admit of your keto bricks, but I just got my order in of the cake pop when it launched, so I should be stocked back up again.
Awesome, man. They sold out in like 6 hours, so it's a good thing you jumped on them.
Man, I had that reminder set for the second they launched, and I got them.
Nice. I feel like from just a pure practicality standpoint, I find it with people that are definitely not keto, and it just seems incredibly inefficient. Like if you're having to pack a bunch of, carbohydrate meals out into the field, you're carrying all that extra weight. You've got to eat every 2 or 3 hours. You're not really hunting when you're making noise opening some Pop-Tart package. It just does not seem to make sense. Whereas with keto, you can intermittent fast if you need to. You're more mentally aware. You're cognitively alert. I feel like if you're out hunting, especially out west, being keto adapted is the only sensible thing.
I agree. And last year, and it might have even been I think the past 2 years. So I played with the whole fruit and honey thing after I came off of the just red meat. And it's still like being back completely pretty much no plants at all right now. Just pretty much meat, cheese, and keto bricks. like the mental stability, everything, energy stability is just, it's leaps and bounds above what it has been any other time when you were eating carbs or something.
What
And
did you notice with the fruit and honey? Because that definitely got popular with Saladino, and I never did it. I never really understood it. It just seemed like a hype, and it didn't make physiological sense to me.
so, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this because our opinions might differ here. But I tend to think that like the concept of metabolic flexibility is kind of should be the target for most people. Is that, and my premises for that is that you should be able to you should be able to function optimally on whatever you eat. So, I don't know if there's much value in that or not. That's just kind of the sense I make of it. So I went kind of down the road of experimenting with more carbs in the diet. And I did notice, and I don't know if it was as much the diet or other factors, I did gain a lot more strength, but I also think that's because I was eating more.
Yeah.
But since, or to stay on your original question, with the fruit and honey stuff, you definitely notice the urge to eat more often. It is, you hear it touted all the time that, fat is the most satiating nutrient. That's I proved it to myself. I don't have to prove it to anyone else. Go try it and you'll know. You could eat, 12 bananas versus like a little pat of butter, and you'll probably be more satisfied off the little pat of butter.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was constantly trying to eat more or needing to eat more. But then, that second year, it was, as I think back to this, it was 2 hunting seasons that I went where I was, eating fruit and honey and stuff. And this past year, on days where I was hunting, I still found myself in the field going back to, I'd cut keto bricks in like thirds or halves and then vacuum seal them. And it's still, I just felt so much better on them. And, when it's, I don't even know the best way to explain it, but it's, if all you're eating is that, you just feel like content with just that. It's like a mental switch or something. I don't know there's probably some science behind what's actually in, a fat to protein ratio that's ketogenic that makes you just feel kind of at ease. You don't need any more. You can just go for hours on just that.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally agree with the desire to be metabolically flexible. Most people are ketogenic to some extent at birth, and then we're just inundated as a society with all the nonsense, fruit purees that they give kids, and then people just eat carbs in excess from then on, basically. So they're farthest thing from fat adapted or metabolically flexible. Then once you become fat adapted, your body doesn't lose the ability or forget how to metabolize carbohydrates and glucose. So like I've always stated that, now that I'm fat adapted, as an example, been strict keto for 10 or 11 years, if I was to eat carbohydrates, my body would know how to use that. So I would consider myself to be metabolically flexible. I may like have some GI distress having not had carbs in so long, but after 24 hours of eating some carbs, like my body would still know how to use that, and that GI distress would likely dissipate. But I just feel better from a ketogenic standpoint too. Like I don't like to be a slave to food, constantly fixated on it, constantly thinking about it, constantly hungry. So yeah, I don't feel like you forget or lose the ability to metabolize glucose. So like if I was forced to eat carbohydrates, I don't think it would be an issue for me whatsoever. But yeah, man, I just feel way better with fats and proteins as the base. Like I don't eat that much vegetation. Certainly don't eat any fruit. And like a lot of people push the honey and fruit thing as being ancestrally consistent. And yeah, we for sure as a species would have eaten, tubers if we found them, or fruits if we found them, or honey if we found them. But the fruits that we have today are nothing like the fruits of our ancestral times. They've all been genetically modified. They're significantly higher in sugar and significantly lower in fiber. So it's not really comparing apples to apples. And honey, honey wouldn't be a daily staple that people are consuming typically either. So fats and proteins as the base to me just seems like the most sustainable, most enjoyable, and certainly the tastiest option for sure.
No, I agree 100%. And, you know, I'll be honest, I feel the best on a diet like that. And, you know, to your point about your body, you know, being able to use glucose, if that wasn't the case, everybody's glucose would be zero if they were on a ketogenic diet. You know, there's still glucose being produced and used. But yeah, absent any sort of like physical performance in the gym or on the mountain, just sitting down for a day at work, just the mental focus and clarity. There's so much less noise with, you know, hunger, or maybe it is even blood sugar swings.
Yeah.
There's a lot less noise in your head when you're just cruising on fat.
Yeah, 100%, man. I feel like so many people go through life and they're just distracted. They're fixated on food. They're just mindlessly snacking. And like when I hunt, when I'm out there in the woods and I've got like a keto brick in my pack and that's it, you know, like I'll have that meal. I'll know confident that that can provide all the energy demands I need for that day in the field if I'm not successful. And it doesn't weigh me down because it's, you know, 145, 150 grams. That'll cut it for the day. And then if I'm, you know, mentally sharp and aware and physically fit, and then I get something on the ground, and then I celebrate that by taking out a tenderloin or something, throwing that on the grill out there on top of a mountainside, like the fat from the brick and that hard-earned lean protein, like to me, that doesn't get any better than that, man.
No, that's about the pinnacle right there.
That is the pinnacle. That is the pinnacle. Well, shoot, man, we definitely need to get together in person, get a hunt in at some point. I'm actually going to be in Washington doing a hunting retreat with Bruce McGlynn next month, early next month. Do you know Bruce?
You know, I've seen him on your podcast, but I don't know him much past that.
No, he seems like a super cool guy, man. I've had him on the podcast twice. I've never met him in person, but it's going to be like a legitimate hunting retreat, teaching people all the skills of hunting, which I'm curious to see because I speak at a bunch of conferences, but I've never spoken at a hunting specific conference. So I'm excited to see kind of the demographic there. But yeah, hunting's the best, man. Like it's I could sit here and swap tales with you on hunting all day long, man. But I don't know if anybody else would want me to go down that rabbit hole. That could be a 4-hour podcast.
No, I'm the same way. But no, if you're ever coming through anywhere near, you just gotta, you know, flag me down because there'll be, you know, I'm selling this house and we're building another one, trying to build one before the baby gets here. So I don't know where I'll be living at the time. I might be in a little storage shed somewhere, but whenever you pass through, I'd be more than happy to hook up with you and go out and do something or even just shake hands.
Well, if we wind up going, we haven't figured out what route we're taking to Washington because I'm going to drive, but I'm going to bring all my gear and stuff. So if we drive through Montana, man, I might just hit you up and we'll do just that. We'll sling some arrows or something.
Absolutely. Do that.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, Ryan, until next time, brother, where do people go to find out more about you and dive deeper into your world?
You know, I'm on Instagram. I think I got a private profile. So don't have too much of a presence, on social media, but you know, maybe, you know, after too long, if we both got some stories, to share, come back on here and we can swap stories and reconnect that way.
100%, man. I'm all for it, brother. Well, Ryan, always a pleasure talking with a fellow hunter. If there's everything I can do for you, man, you just let me know.
I will, man. Same to you.
All right. See you, man.
All right. See you later.